Hello and welcome to the ESL Teaching Podcast. I'm your host, Yeva Grossless, otherwise known as simply Yeva, and I am so thankful that you tuned in. I'm looking forward to sharing both my knowledge and experience on this podcast, as well as that of my fellow teachers. Hi, Valentina. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
And I'm so happy to have you here. I'm honored to have you here. I've been following you for a long time and fangirling, so I'm super excited to share your wisdom with all of my listeners.
Well, I've been following you too, so I'm really honored to be invited and happy to be on the show.
Awesome. So for those of you who don't know Valentina, I'm going to introduce you. And we're going to dive right into the questions.
Super.
So Valentina Gonzalez is a former teacher who has served 20 plus years in education in her own classroom as a district facilitator for English learners, a professional development specialist for multilingual learners, and as an educational consultant for Seidlitz Education. Her work's primary focuses have been on literacy, culture, and language. Valentina delivers professional development and coaches teachers of MLs to support language and literacy instruction. She is the co-author of Reading and Writing with English Learners, a framework for K-5, and the picture book Krofne with Baba. Her work has also been published in numerous journals and professional publications such as Edutopia, MiddleWeb, TEPSA, EdWeek, and School Library Journal. If you want to reach Valentina, reach her through her website, which I'm going to link underneath this episode, or on Twitter at Valentina ESL. Well, that was a lot, and I'm so happy to have you here. So let's start with the first question, which is actually one of my favorite questions because I love stories. Okay? So tell us a little bit of your backstory. What was your path to where you are now, and how did you decide to become an ELL teacher?
Well, first, I'm really impressed that you rolled that R in Krofne with Baba. That was really good. Very excellent pronunciation. A little bit of my backstory, really, I feel like my life has come full circle. So those of you that know me know that I am an immigrant. My family immigrated to the United States from the former Yugoslavia. Back when I was just a toddler, my family came here, and so my first language is Serbian. We lived in just a Serbian bubble in our home. All of us spoke Serbian. My parents didn't know English when we first came here. And so I was really immersed in the Serbian culture for the majority of my young life until I went to elementary school. And that was kind of my introduction into English. And it was quite shocking. Yeah, it was a big shock. So when I graduated from high school, and I'm skipping a lot of years here, but for time's sake, when I graduated from high school, I was the first one in my family to graduate from high school and first one in my family to go to college and graduate. I became a teacher because I loved school so much and I wanted to give back based on all of the education and experiences I had. And becoming an ESL teacher many years later and serving the students like I was, the young me, has been a real honor and treasure. Serving the families like my family has been a real honor and treasure. I didn't know I was going to be an ELL teacher. I didn't set out to become an ELL teacher. I wanted to be an educator. Mm-hmm. And the path that led me here, those stepping stones that led me to where I am today, I had no idea that they were going to be laid out the way they were. But I'm so grateful and I'm so honored to do what I do today and to be able to give back to the community and the families like my own. So I hope that kind of sums up my path and my history, and why I decided to become an ELL teacher and how it kind of has come full circle in my life.
Absolutely. And you know, the stories that I talk to other educators and I look at like my own story, you work with younger students, and you know, we're going to dive a little bit more into that, you know, further on. But you work with younger students who were just like you when you started. And I am so drawn to teenagers because that was my first experience in the United States. And I still live it every single time when I get somebody new coming to a new country. And it's like, you don't even know how much I know. How you feel, you know? So just giving back and having that, you know, safety net, and just like, I think teaching from the depth of your heart, you know, not only from, you know, it's all for the kids, it's all that. Yes, it's all great. But when you have that deep, deep spot in your heart, the flame that never goes out because you know your why, I think that is so, so powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, it is. It is deep.
So let's go into what grade levels do you work at? So I already mentioned it's little ones, but still, what was your teaching setup when you were in the school? Did you have a separate classroom? Did you coach mainstream teachers and all that?
Yeah. Well, you know, when I first started teaching, I taught third grade. I was the ELA teacher. I taught reading, writing, spelling at the time. It was separate, social studies. And my partner taught math and science. I also did the same thing with fourth grade for a number of years. I taught in the mainstream classroom setting for over a decade before I actually went into teaching as an ESL teacher. In the district where I worked, we had mainstream teachers, and then we had a second set of ESL specialty teachers that supported mainstream teachers and supported our large group of English learners at the campus where I worked. And so when I became an ESL teacher, I co-taught in classrooms, but I also pulled newcomer students out and worked with them in small groups. So I did have a separate classroom when I became an ESL specialty teacher, and I shared that classroom with many other ESL specialty teachers. I believe at that time we had 5. Our campus was quite large. I believe in total at our elementary campus, we had over 1,000 students and about 250 English learners. So that's pretty large for an elementary campus. We were not a bilingual campus. We were solely ESL. And we worked at about a 1:60 ratio, meaning 1 ESL teacher for every 60 English learners on our campus. We shared a portable building. I don't know if you're familiar with those, you know. We shared a portable building. So the 5 of us were in that portable, and we basically all had a corner approximately.
Oh, gosh.
I know. And it's really interesting to me how, as ESL teachers across the nation, we serve students in various places, closets, trailers. It's not fair. It's not equitable.
It is not.
A lot of times it's scary for students. I had one student, a brand new first grader from South America, and he spoke his primary language proficiently, but English was him. It was his first day, and when I brought him into the school, he looked so excited and he was happy. But as I walked him to the back of the building and he realized we were going outside, he began to look frightened and scared. And then he realized I was taking him to a portable. We were going outside and I had no way to communicate with him in his primary language. He began to cry. Mm-hmm. And he stopped and he let go of my hand. And I had to get another student who spoke Portuguese, an older student, to let him know the classroom is outside. It's okay. It's safe. And she walked outside with us and comforted him. But, you know, it's just these unusual situations where we have our most vulnerable students. It's just sometimes not a fair thing.
I think though I don't know, maybe I tend to like go like deep into things and maybe, you know, think too much, but I believe that kids know so much more than we have like the setup. So sometimes teachers have, you know, sometimes ESL teachers say that they're not taken seriously, right? But the kids know if your room is in the closet, you must not be that important, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is all relates, and the kid, you don't need to speak a language to know that this is what is it, you know?
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And families know it too. And so once I realized, you know, and had a grasp of what was going on, the image we had on our campus, I really had to think about how was I going to change this? What was I going to do to advocate for our students and our families? And I had a talk with administrators on our campus about shifting this mindset. And it starts with administration. It starts there. It starts with how they see us, how they see our students, how they value us. And it's a trickle down effect. And we have to think about, you know, what messages we're sending to families and students and our colleagues, and what messages we need to be sending. And that was, you know, a big conversation, and it happened in the summertime. I set up an appointment with the administrators on my campus. I outlined exactly what I wanted to share with them. I talked to them about the vision I had as a teacher of multilingual students and as an advocate for them. And then I asked them, what was your vision? What is your vision for these students and their families? Let's align that. Yeah. What do we need to do to make sure that this vision is actually going to come to fruition? Because if we're in a closet or we're outside in a portable, yeah. Or we're being pulled in all directions and students aren't being served, is that vision really going to happen? And the answer is usually no, it's not. So yes, you know, I did coach mainstream teachers. I did deliver professional development on my campus as well. And it was just an amazing experience to be able to go into classrooms, pre-K to 5th grade, and see the different teaching styles and learn from them, and then go into other classrooms and share that knowledge as well. It was sprinkle the good stuff throughout the building. I planned with teachers, long-term planning, short-term planning, just probably the best professional development I ever had in my years on campus.
Absolutely. It's nice that you had the opportunity to do that, because I think with a larger population of ELs, you can then have those conversations. Not that, you know, anybody else can't have it, but I work in a smaller district, and yes, I'm advocating. And I know there's a lot of teachers in smaller districts with 100 ELL students dispersed over, you know, 6 buildings or so. And there's 1 or 2 teachers traveling. So it is a hard conversation to have. And it is, and more often than not, the words are, we support you, but the actions are, unfortunately, nobody has room. You know?
I know.
Or, the when you're like, I am in two schools, so planning with teachers and with different, it's a dream of mine, but it's just not happening, you know. So I'm glad you shared that, the fact, you know, that you had the planning and that you were able to go and coach the teachers. This is super, super helpful. I do have to say that I am one of those people that I will go to administration and I say, hey, I have a workshop for the teachers. I want, when can I deliver it? So it
Yes.
doesn't matter the size of a district and the number of the students. So by now, whenever there is you know, a teacher workshop day, you know, there's like, hey, you want to say something? I say, absolutely. So
Good.
that is so important, I think, you know, to be able to reach out and to, you know, to your colleagues and to have this collaborative relationship.
Yeah, I think we can all make a difference, whether it's in small moves or big moves. And if you're feeling like, you know, I can't do that, I don't have that kind of circumstance, you have to think about the environment you're in, the circumstance you have, and what kind of impact you can make, whether it's big or small. You can do something to make a change, to make a positive impact on the learners and the families that you have.
Absolutely. Well, let's chat a little bit about literacy in English learners, and what has your experience been in teaching literacy, and what are some of the most effective ways you have found to reach your students?
Yeah, I think this is really important. Literacy is one of the most important things we can support our learners with. So something I've really found effective with when we think about literacy is just starting where students are and knowing them really well as literate beings. Sitting down next to a child and getting to know what they can do. I think when we confer with a multilingual learner, an English learner, sitting down next to them and listening to them read in the language they can read in is so beneficial in so many ways. Whether they can read in Korean or Arabic or Serbian or English, whatever language they can read in, I want to first hear that. I want to start from their assets, what they can do. And it can teach me so much. No matter if I can understand that language or not, I can learn so much just from the point of view of sitting next to them and seeing, can they turn the pages? Can they hold the book correctly? The directionality of their language. I can listen to the pauses. I can listen for corrections. I can look at their expression. I can feel their comfort level. There's so many things I can observe just from the standpoint of being a teacher and knowing about literacy in general, even if I don't understand their primary language. But I'm also, this act of listening to them in their primary language sends so many valuable messages to them as literate beings and as humans. It's invaluable. And those messages are important. If a child isn't reading in English yet, but they can read in another language, they feel seen, they feel heard, their language is honored. And those are so important. Those things are so important. And sometimes we forget that, you know, it's not just about English. It's so much more, you know. What we're doing is teaching a child, and that's first and foremost. It's not about the language. It's not about the content. It's first about the child. And so when I sit next to them, I want to hear what they can do. And then I'm going to build on that. Yeah. But that also sends so many messages to the children around them. Yeah. If I'm in a classroom filled with, you know, a heterogeneous group of kids that are monolingual and multilingual and all different languages, when they hear me and see me reading next to a child who speaks a language they can't speak, now they see that languages are valued, that culture is important, that everyone can do something.
Yep.
And those messages are important too.
This is so inspiring, and I'm so glad you're talking about this, because I get a question all the time, like you get a newcomer, where do you begin? I said that it does not cost. The body language is everything. Body language is universal, and that's what you're doing. You're making sure that they know that it's safe and that you value them. It's, I can't remember the percentages. I like to repeat this. The body language is majority of our communication, and then the tone of voice and the words is like only 9% or something. So absolutely start with being a human. That's
right.
Right.
We have to humanize instruction. We
Absolutely.
have to humanize it. We spend so much time focused on the standards and the curriculum and the assessment. But if we back up and start with the child first, all of the rest will come down the line. But we need to slow down and focus on what
about this. I don't know who can hear us, because educators across the country are saying the same thing. And we even had a book club on whether rewards are good or not, and it was a great book we in the book, and it says like we need to slow down, and intrinsic motivation takes time. Extrinsic motivation, you have a standard, here's a cookie, but intrinsic motivation and all of that. So I don't know whose ears need to hear that, but we need to slow down and humanize education, and humanize the children who can't speak our language yet, but when you twist it the other way around, we can't speak their languages either. So it's not that it's just that they end up in our world, right?
Yes.
If we ended up in their world, we'd probably feel the same way. So absolutely, yeah. So this brings me to another question, right? What about cultural inclusion? What is your definition of this term, and how do you envision it implemented in the classroom?
I think cultural inclusion is all about, again, centering students and bringing their experiences into our instruction. Instead of focusing on the actual concepts and standards that we have to teach, which are important, we can bring students' voice into it. So for example, if we're talking about, if the unit or the study is about food chains, or if it's about landscapes and geography, we can bring students' lived experiences into that. If we're talking about holidays or traditions, we can bring students and families into this conversation by inviting them to share their experiences. If we're talking about food, the food pyramid or food chains, what are their experiences? We ask them to share rather than just telling them, this is the food chain. This is, the life cycle of this animal, or what animals do you know that are in your environment or where you come from? Let's talk about that life cycle. Let's talk about the food chain in the environment where you come from, or the traditions in your experiences. We're bringing those in, and we're asking families and students to contribute to the conversation rather than just dispersing information and saying, this is, what government is like. This is what geography is like. This is the definition of this. Rather, we're including our students and families into the conversation and inviting them to talk and share with their peers. And when we do this, we're asking students to be thinkers. And in today, like the life we live today, we need our society to be filled with thinkers rather than just people who can spit back information. Yeah. Thinking is the key to success in our society. If we don't know how to think for ourselves, then we are creating kids who will one day be incapable of, being citizens who are capable of working and, having good lives, and thinking is what we want them to leave our classrooms being able to do, rather than memorizing.
Absolutely, yeah.
You
I think
know,
with older kids, it's a little bit more difficult in the sense because if there's no motivation or underlying reason, it's just everything is so connected. Let's say you're in seventh grade, right? And you
yes,
are learning about American government. You have no background information even about your own government, where you come from, and here you're learning about democracy, right? So the urge to go to Google and find answers is huge. So
yeah,
I guess, like you said, pausing a little bit and saying, hey, maybe we can kind of get curious about how is it maybe in where you come from or where your
right,
family comes from.
yes,
It doesn't have to be a in-depth unit, but just bringing into their awareness that this is not this is a great government system, but there are different ones, and maybe you're more familiar with the other one. I think it's beneficial to all students.
yes, and like you said, we do have to teach certain things like American government, or there are concepts we have to teach, but we can start
Yeah,
by pulling from their funds of knowledge, pulling from their background experiences, because that will help them understand the new concepts they're going to learn. And even if, I'm a seventh grader and I don't know about the government where I come from, we can ask them to go home and ask parents and family members, what was that like? Or tell me about that. And they're learning from their family members. Now we come to school and add to that conversation about what is that like here in American culture? What is American government like? And we're building on that background knowledge that they have from home as well. So I think there's just a lot of ways we can include culture, and it's not just one way.
yes, absolutely. I like your ideas. I think they're very, very interesting and valuable. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, which is your favorite language domain to teach? Okay, so what are some of the most effective ways you have found to teach it? I know it's best to teach all four, right? But sometimes we just feel more comfortable, with reading rather than speaking, listening rather than writing. I know writing, I love to write, but I just get, I don't know, I get the students writing and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So which one is yours?
Okay, I think you're not alone in the writing, struggle. I will say that, in every lesson, there should be all four domains.
Okay.
In every content area, in every classroom, students should practice all four domains. And even if it's just brief, even if in a math class they write one sentence at the end of the lesson, or in a social studies class, they just do a exit out with a sentence stem. Every classroom, every day, students should practice all four domains. I don't have a favorite. I just don't. But I will tell you that I think that for our English learners, multilingual learners, I think one of the most important is speaking,
Yes.
because it's really important for our multilingual learners to have that oral background, and that listening background in order to build on reading and writing.
Absolutely.
And here's why. And I also want to preface that by saying that every child is going to be different. So for some, reading might be more important. For others, writing might be more important. But overall, I believe that speaking is one of the most critical factors. Listening and speaking are really important, that oracy. When we think about how all of us acquired language, and every one of us acquired it first by listening,
Yes.
and then speaking. All of us. No matter if we are monolingual or multilingual, we first listened, and then we built this huge bank of vocabulary that we then spoke. And those words that we have in our bank, in our listening and speaking vocabulary, became the words that we read and we write. And that's why it's so important that we have practice with students on speaking and listening. That's probably why I think speaking is one of the most important ones. Reading and writing are critical, but we can't read and write if we haven't listened and spoke. So reading and writing essentially are extensions of our speaking and listening.
I do just remember I heard somewhere in either a TED Talk or one of my linguistics books, I can't remember, but when you think about it, the oral tradition has survived in humanity for thousands of years, and the written word is only in its infancy, when in the grand scheme of things. So, you know, being able to communicate, a lot of our multilingual learners are also judged by of their knowledge of language, or the amount of language, by how much they are able to say. Even their understanding is judged from how much they're able to say, and even the accent. So it is such a it's psychological, it's everything, you know, and speaking is hugely important. It's also difficult to teach in newcomers, because I have two newcomers now, and one of them is just like very outgoing, and he's gonna try everything and anything, and then he laughs everything off, and the other one laughs before he speaks and he says, I don't know. So it's just different personalities and everything. But I think having different ways to teach them, whether it's a repetition in the beginning, right, or just kind of like listening. And yes, I totally agree with you.
And they're all interconnected. It's not like we're just going to speak and listen and then we'll read and write, but the interconnectivity of it, and we can use content to anchor it. So I'm not just doing it in isolation in an ELD or ESL classroom, but it's all interconnected, and it's relevant, and it's compelling, and it's something that students don't even realize it's happening. Those are all important things to keep in mind. Even with newcomers, I know a lot of us want to make sure our newcomers have those survival skills, and those are important, teaching them how to ask to use the restroom and hi, my name is, and all of that. Those survival skills are important, but we can teach those very quickly.
Yes.
And move on to content as fast as possible.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, that brings me to a question about pictures and images. And I've seen you share that picture word inductive model. And before you, I didn't know it had a name because I was using it too, right? So tell us a little bit about what it is and why it's so effective.
Yes. Oh my gosh. The picture word inductive model is one of my all-time favorite methods. And I do share it widely because it's so effective in supporting language and content simultaneously, which is what kind of I alluded to a moment ago. And when we do this, we're making sure that our multilingual learners or our English learners are getting what they need with that grade level curriculum, while also increasing their language level. And so we start by looking at the content. We start by looking at the unit of study, what students need to know and be able to do. And we select an image that's relevant and compelling, that's going to pull that information out, present that image in front of students. And then we ask students to brainstorm words that they see on the image, and we label the image together. this elicits their funds of knowledge. It pulls from their background experiences and what they know, and also they're hearing from their peers. Mostly when I do this, I do it in a heterogeneous classroom. So multilingual learners can hear from their same grade level peers, but at various levels of proficiency, and they're learning from monolingual English speakers as well. And once we've brainstormed all the words, we chorally read them. So they're practicing that vocabulary. And a lot of times they'll say words from the image, and I'll know a higher level academic word. And that's when I'm going to point that out. I'll still honor the words that they tell me, but I'm going to level up their vocabulary as we label and they give me words. So we move from the word level to the sentence level. After we've labeled, I'm going to help them use these words in creating sentences first verbally. Remember, we just talked about how important that speaking is and that oracy. This picture word inductive model really supports all of those language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and then writing. And in this next step, we're going to help them build that oracy, that listening and speaking. I'm going to share with them a few sentence stems, and I'm going to model for them how I use that picture that we labeled, and we are going to build some sentences. And then they practice with their peers a few times before we move on to writing a paragraph. And I show them how we use the picture that we labeled as a word bank to create this paragraph. There's so many different variations of the picture word inductive model, lots of different ways to extend it, use it for different skills in the classroom, and go even deeper. This is just I've just kind of given you a lay of the land, but it really is useful in any content area. You could use it in math to kind of dissect and talk about a word problem or a chart in math, in science, in social studies, in language arts, really any subject area, to kind of analyze and expose the essential vocabulary and the sentence structures that students need to have an in-depth conversation about a concept and then write about it as well.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting when you do that. It's also good feedback and kind of like formative assessment in your mind to see how much the students already know about the topic. You know, sometimes you think that, oh, well, I haven't taught them that word. But when you think about it, it's like, let's not make ourselves that important, okay? They learn not only from us. And they come and they would say, a newcomer, you know, like maybe can't remember how to pronounce 33, but then he's going to say some word that is really content related. So it's so interesting to see how much the kids already know. And I already am thinking about how awesome it would be for even like a warm-up activity before the class, you know, to get them all engaged and get them all interested, and just to see, hey, I know I can move on now. That's
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can use it at the beginning before a unit as building background knowledge, or you can use it at the end of a unit to kind of review and see what students have gained and gathered, more of as a feedback for your unit to see if there are any misconceptions or to fill gaps.
Absolutely. All right, we already talked a little bit about collaboration, but when I want to expand on it, okay? So we all know that collaboration can be like really a beautiful relationship where two professionals work together to help the students and the greater community. But there are many situations when teachers are unable to establish a rapport with their colleagues due to various reasons. So sometimes it's lack of knowledge of how to teach and reach English learners, preconceptions and assumptions. And many times it's exhaustion due to unreasonable work expectations or personality clashes, right? So what are your best tips for collaboration?
This is a really important question because as ESL teachers, we do have to collaborate with a lot of different teachers, and that means a lot of different personalities. So the fact is, we're going to be met with resistance eventually. If you haven't already been met with it, you're probably going to be met with some type of resistance to collaboration at some point in your career. And we need to know how to deal with that, how to work through those resistances. In my own experiences, I've had resistance in collaborating, and what I've found is that just taking a step back to think about what may cause the resistance, and remembering that collaboration with colleagues may be new to them. Some teachers have never collaborated, have, walked into the school building at 7 o'clock in the morning, closed their doors, taught all day, and then left the building. And, that's the extent of it. In many circumstances, teachers are not comfortable with sharing space, with sharing lessons, even with sharing students. Yes. And so understanding that if that's the case, small steps, engaging in small moves towards collaboration, and realizing the comfort level of some teachers is different than others. In other cases, teachers may be uncomfortable with collaboration because they already feel that what they're doing is working, and it may be. And I'm sharing this with you because Maria G. Dove, who is one of the editors of the book Portraits of Collaboration,
yep,
with Andrea Honningsfeld, she mentioned this during another, I believe, a podcast that we did together. She mentioned that there are some teachers that are amazing teachers, and they feel like, what are you going to contribute that's going to make my instruction better? Yeah. And that is a really valid point. Some teachers are doing amazing things. We're all doing amazing things, not some. All teachers are doing amazing things. And sometimes resistance comes from the fact that I need to know how you're going to make my planning, my instruction, and our students better. And that's a really good point. So it's not that we have to prove ourselves to our colleagues, but we need to know, like, what are you going to do to make my workload less, to make this instructional practice better than what it already is? What are you going to contribute? And that's something that, we have to work together as a team to share. I'm the specialist in language, you're the specialist in content. What we can do together is really make our lessons, spectacular, because you have this great asset and I have this great asset, and together it's going to be even more fabulous. So I would really recommend that you analyze what could be the source, the root that's causing resistance, and then take small moves to move towards collaborating together. Every situation is different, and I did write a chapter in the book Portraits of Collaboration that offers a lot of different suggestions, and one of the main things is building trust with the colleagues you collaborate with. I think that is key in collaboration. If I trust you and you trust me, then we are going to be one step closer to making collaborative practices together. And trust is built in those small moves. Like if I say I'm going to come to your class at 12:15, I will be there, and you can count on me.
Yep.
If I say I'm going to bring instructional materials that support our English learners, I'm going to bring it. You know, that confidence that you can trust the word that I give you is going to make those collaborative practices stronger. Each time I give you my word and I keep it.
It's very, very important. And it's really such valuable advice. Thank you for this.
Yeah.
So I have a curiosity question for you.
Okay.
And that is that you're an educational consultant with Seidlitz, right? So many teachers might wonder, what does an educational consultant work entail? Like, what does your day look like? What do you do? And, everybody thinks that, I don't know, not everybody thinks, but like, what does your day look like? So
Yeah.
I have an image, right? Either bursted or...
Yeah, no problem. Yes, I work for Seidlitz Education, and it is an amazing organization. We have a community of authors who go to campuses and work with teachers and work with districts in supporting English learners. And so it's really a dream job for me. I've loved Seidlitz Education even before I began working with them. So my day-to-day, it really is different each day, to be honest with you. But when I'm working on campuses, I go to a campus in the morning and I deliver professional development for them. Sometimes it looks different. Like when I do a full day professional development, it's 6 hours. So I'm sharing with them instructional strategies that support multilingual learners. And I am always using one of our Seidlitz resources. 7 Steps to a Language-Rich Interactive Classroom is one of the most popular ones. You have it? Yeah, it is amazing. It's the one that was introduced to me first as a teacher and how I actually learned about Seidlitz Education itself. And then the other one that I train on most of all, besides 7 Steps, is the Reading and Writing with English Learners, which I'm the co-author with Dr. Melinda Miller that you mentioned earlier. And so if I'm not training on a campus, then I'm working on content creation, which today that's what I'm doing at my house, as you can see. And I'm working on content creation and I'm writing as well. So my day varies. And, another thing I really love to do is go into classrooms and model instruction. So if I'm not doing PD, there are campuses that ask me to go and model instruction as part of the PD. And that's probably one of my favorite things to do.
I love this. This does sound like a dream job. Actually, I kind of like envisioned it like that too. So
well, if you have any specific questions that I didn't, answer as far as what I do day to day, let me know, because that was probably not a very thorough answer.
I mean, I don't know, like, like, is there a schedule? Do you work? So for example, do you find yourself like a busy time of year at the start of the school year and then winds down? And how do you work with the same districts? Do you travel to different states, like things like that?
Good questions. Yes. Okay. Those are good questions. Yes, there is a really busy time of the year. Usually the busiest is August, but a lot of the summertime is extremely busy. So I travel a lot during that time. And then throughout the year, I travel sporadically. But typically, I'm gone a lot. In 1 month, I do several trainings. So that means I travel throughout the nation. A lot of my trainings are in Texas, but I was just looking at my calendar for June because someone asked me, I was talking to a district that I'm working with in Iowa, and she said, I think I heard you're going to be in Iowa again in June. And I said, yes, I'll be in Iowa twice in June, in Delaware, and all throughout Texas. So June is already filling up. I'd say June is the second busiest month. besides August. So yes, lots of traveling. But you know, sometimes people think that traveling is so fun and exciting, and when you're an educational consultant, you get to see lots of places. But for me, I go to the airport, the hotel, and the school, and back to the airport. So often I don't get to see any of the fun sites.
I think it's also important for teachers to know that summer is a busy time of year. And I learned it when I started my business. I realized it's an educational business, and I had never been busier than June, not so much yet, but July and August and September and October, it's like, woo, what's going on? So I'm very happy. But then the rest of the year for me personally, like right now, it's a little bit sleepy. So but everybody's tired, and you know, like nobody wants it. I think it's just like everybody's drained, you know. So yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Well, I have one last question that I just like, the first and last question that I ask every single one of my guests. In your opinion, how can all teachers set up their classrooms for success?
I would have to say setting up your classroom for success would be, and I'm not sure if I'm answering this question the way you're envisioning it, but for me, I learned over time, it took me a while to learn this, but I learned that it was important not to spend the summer or before school starts making the classroom look beautiful and filling it up before kids started. I learned that it was important to leave the walls blank, let go of all that, you know, making it look perfect before the kids came to school, and let them help you set it up. Let their fingerprints be on the walls. And I don't mean literally their fingerprints, but I mean their work should be on the walls, and the anchor charts should be co-created with them. And when I started doing this, I actually put a poster on my wall that had a poem about how we would co-create our classroom walls, that these walls would be filled soon, so that when parents came to bring their kids to school on the first week of school, you know, and they're like, why are these walls blank? They could see that the reason they're blank is because we are going to make these walls together. We are going to fill this classroom with student created work and anchor charts that we do together. It's more meaningful if we build it together than if I just put posters on the wall, because posters become wallpaper and that's useless to kids. But when they take ownership of it, then it belongs to all of us, and we're going to understand it and learn from it, rather than just useless stuff that, you know, I worked hard at putting up and it's not meaningful to anyone else. So I really believe that that's the way we can set up our classrooms for success.
This is so beautiful, and it ties in so beautifully with everything that you said about being human to our students, about honoring their cultures, about including, about being curious. And this is all ties into this last, you know, tip for success. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so happy that you invited me and that we finally got to meet on Zoom.
I know, finally. I'm so happy about that. So, Valentina, tell me, where can people find you again? I mentioned at the beginning, but let us all know.
Yeah, well, I'm most active on Twitter at Valentina ESL, and I do have a website, valentinaesl.com. I'm on Facebook. I have a group called Advocating for ELLs. I think it's called Advocating for ELLs.
It is. I'm a part of it.
Okay. And so you can find me there and find me just about anywhere else too, but those are the main places that I am. And I'm so excited to be part of your community, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you loved what you heard today, be sure to do 2 things. First, make sure to subscribe to the ESL Teaching Podcast so you don't miss an episode. And second, leave a positive review wherever you listen, on iTunes, Spotify, or any other platform. Positive reviews will improve the chances of this podcast to be discovered in the feed and help our fellow ESL, ELL teachers. And of course, there's a third thing. If you aren't following me on social media yet, come join me on Instagram at SimplyYevaESL, Facebook, Simply Yeva, or connect with me on my website, simplyyeva.com. Thanks again, and until next time.